Today is the Epiphany, and Epiphany is normally on January 6th. But in order to have better participation, more participation, the bishops of the United States back in I think the 70s, moved it to the Sunday between the 2nd and the 8th. So today it falls on the 5th, and the Magi are a day early. So that's what we think about. But when we think about the Magi, I mean, here were people, it'd be one thing if there were a lot of people looking for the star. If there were a lot of people who said, whoa, look at that star, that must be, the star for the King of the Jews. And so there was confirmation in what they were doing, but they really didn't have that kind of confirmation. So to travel for hundreds of miles, it's not like today where it's easy. You can just go into the car or go on a plane and everything is fine. But back then, travel was not easy. And what would happen if they got to the place and if they were wrong, or, it was nobody knew, what would happen? Certainly they would be laughed at, they'd be scoffed at. Oh, these are the guys who left everything, behind, and then they went on this quest, and, they completely failed at the quest. So there is that situation. There's also the situation of human knowledge brings you only so far, because they saw the star, they said, okay, if it's the King of the Jews, then it has to be Jerusalem. And it seemed to make sense, it makes sense. Okay, the King of the Jews to be in Jerusalem. But that wasn't where the baby was. The baby was in Bethlehem, so 7 miles or so away from Jerusalem. So they were able to ascertain the whereabouts by the prophets. And the people there knew the prophets, and so they were able to find and to ascertain where the baby was to be born. The interesting thing, again, with King Herod is that King Herod is this person who's pathologically jealous of anybody trying to usurp his power. So whether it be his sons whom he killed, whether it be his wife whom he killed, that he was not going to be one to take to the fact that this baby was born who was to be the King of the Jews. After all, I'm King of the Jews. So Herod, you have Herod. Because it really would, like I said at Christmas time, it would have been wonderful if Herod had said, hey, the King of the Jews, that's great. Let's have a liturgical procession. We'll have the priests there, we'll have the musicians, we'll have the cantors. We'll do a liturgical procession from Jerusalem into Bethlehem. But instead, Herod was very concerned, and the people of Jerusalem were very concerned, because if Herod's concerned, who knows what Herod can do with his jealousy. So better to not worry about it, better to stay at home and just kind of walk and just watch and do what we need to do. So the Magi came, and when they came, they, what were they expecting? Were they expecting a baby in a house? Because, the one thing about it is that you always see the Magi come to the stable, but by now the Lord's in the house. So, maybe a toddler or something like that at this point, but who knows? But, we think about that. So they come. But it's not going to be in a luxurious palace. It's not going to be in a place where you would expect the king to be. So they come to that place and they worship. They believe. They see with the eyes of faith instead of with the eyes that see, oh, this can't be, this isn't, what we're expecting. But they worshiped. And they gave their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold for the king, frankincense for the priest, myrrh for burial. And so they gave their gifts. So they then had to go back to by another way, because they were warned not to go to see Herod. Because after all, if the Magi are coming to see Herod, then Herod could easily dispatch them. Here are the only people who were bold enough to go to see the King of the Jews, so let's dispatch them, and so they wouldn't have any record of having the King of the Jews. And plus, he would ascertain where the baby was born, where he was, so then he could go out and kill the baby himself, or have his henchmen go out and do that. And so the wise men came and they saw the star and they searched diligently. I think one of the things we can think about this year is, what are we looking for this year? What are we looking for in our relationship with God? The one thing about it is that I agree with Bishop Barron, is that if you do begin the quest of looking to have a deeper relationship with God, expect opposition. And opposition can be, opposition from family or friends, but it can also be just the busyness of life, I'm going to start this. Oh, I can't start it now. Oh, that's coming up. I can't start it now. I can't start it now. So you have all these things that kind of try to prevent us from really beginning that search, beginning to have that deepening relationship with God. The other thing that you'll see is that once you begin the search, if you begin the search, especially with Scripture, there will be a lot of things that will become new, that will be, important. You'll look at it and you'll say, wow, I never saw the, the interconnections that are there. And so you'll be, amazed. But then after a while, if you read your Scriptures, and you go back to it, okay, well, I've read that. And so you're not going to have that same feeling, that same, newness that you had then. And so are you willing to persevere? Because, like I say, you can start out with that kind of a, oh, this was so important. This is so wonderful. This is so great. And then, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you go back to the same thing that you saw, so wonderful and it was so great, and you read it again. Okay, I've read that before. So are you willing to persevere through that and not rely just on your feelings? Because again, it could be like, well, I must be doing something wrong because I'm not getting the same feelings that I got back, when I first started. But again, don't expect that to be the case. But then the other thing is, you don't want to go into like kind of a bland complacency, okay, just something more to just check off during the day, okay, I've done that, okay, I've done that, I can check that off. So the Magi came and they were willing to give up everything, and willing to give up everything to look for the baby Jesus. I think one thing in our lives is that what are we willing to do? What are we planning to do? Because if we don't make the plan, then it's not going to occur. So what are we willing to do to plan to deepen our relationship with Christ this year of 2025, this Jubilee year of 2025? What are we willing or wanting to do to help us to develop our relationship with God? Thanks and God bless.